Truth on my blade, every line's exploded. You swing your words, I counter with precision. Battle of reason, this is my mission. Raise your fist, let them know. No. Raise your voice, let it blow. Woo! We clash our swords of reason. Cut through like no retreating. Yeah. No fear, no chain, no treason. Woo! We clash our swords of reason. We clash our swords of reason. Cut through like no.
Welcome everybody to Swords of Reason right here on the SpeakeaZy show, Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. And this is where logic meets passion. Today's debate prompt: being an atheist is a rational position. And today's debaters, for the affirmative, we have TheIndianJesus, who has a channel right here on YouTube known for covering politics, hot topics, and resurrecting the second coming of common sense. Yep. And and for the negative, we have MadeByJimbob, a professional noticer with a channel also here on YouTube, found in the description, known for his philosophical breakdowns, sharp satire, debates, and hand-drawn comics. All right, debaters, you know the rules. We're going to start with the affirmative. So, Lutch, whenever you're ready to start your opening statement, I will start the timer up with your voice. And again, thank you both for being here.
All right. Well, thank you to SpeakeaZy and thank you to JimBob for this debate. I'm not nervous at all, guys. First and most importantly, we must define atheist as well as a rational position. Gordon Stein writes, if theism is a belief in God and atheism is a lack of belief in God, then there's no third position or middle ground is possible, but there are different levels to this. We can look at the Richard Dawkins scale that is split into 7 degrees of belief. First being a strong atheist, where you don't question the existence of God, but claim to not just have faith, but knowledge of God. Then 2 is de facto, where you don't know for sure, but you strongly believe, as I would imagine most of you are. 3 would be weak theist, where you're uncertain, but you're more inclined to believe. 4 is pure agnostic. And this is the 50-50 way that most people use the word, but as we will explore, it is not the only definition of agnostic. But when you are equally, think that it's equally probable that God does exist and equally probable that God does not. 5 would be the would be the weak atheist, where you don't know, but you're not, you're saying probably not. Number 6 would be the de facto atheist, where you'd say, I can't know for certain, but God is very improbable. It is only level 7, the strong atheist, where the person claims to have knowledge or even the positive belief that God does not exist. This means that only a very small minority of people that actually embody this level of disbelief, and they usually have blue hair, and you can find them screaming on libs at TikTok. I don't have numbers on this, but I'd be willing to bet that most people who fall 3 or higher on that Dawkins scale, for better or worse, simply do not have religion or God in their head unless it's directly brought up. This is an important distinction to make, as I am an agnostic atheist. I would fall probably somewhere between the 5 and 6 on that scale, and that means I am not making any claims. I am merely unconvinced of the existence of any God or gods. Gnostic here means knowledge, theist means a theistic God, and a is a prefix that means without. Agnostic, atheist, without knowledge, without belief. It simply means I don't know, but I am unconvinced. So is that a rational position? I was going to do a deep dive on some of the philosophy that I was balls deep in when I last studied this stuff 15 years ago, but JimBob is clearly better at that than I am and is way more familiar with the specifics of different schools of thought and all that stuff. So given he asked for this debate after I was last here talking about my religious positions, I would hope he is here for an interesting exploration of our ideas instead of getting some technical metaphysical point to hang his hat on. By rational position, I am simply claiming that it is not crazy or insane to be unconvinced of the existence of a God. I'm not making any grand metaphysical claims about the basis of reality. I'm simply saying it is not irrational for one to be unconvinced. Atheism is not a belief. It's not an ideology. It doesn't have a perspective or a worldview. It is merely the answer to one question. Do you believe in God? If the answer is anything other than yes, one is an atheist. Perhaps by the end of this debate, Jimbob will have converted me to Christianity. That would not make my current position irrational. The debate is not whether atheism is correct or incorrect. So Jimbob must either show that the millions of non-believers, both the raging libs as well as the people who just grew up without a direct religious influence and don't think about this stuff, are all insane, or he can simply provide proof of God. I, however, do not need to show that I can prove that God doesn't exist. Again, that's not what I believe. And two, I would not have accepted that debate because I know I can't do that. I don't even really want to be debating religion, as I think politics is far more relevant to everyday people. And the right wing is pushing away people who uphold conservative values just as well, if not better, than some Christians, i.e. the Skittles churches. And yet, we all get lumped in together with the militant atheist stereotype. Now, I don't even blame anyone for having those associations with the word atheist, but the fact of the matter is, I am proof that it's not the atheism that rots one's brains, it is the lack of spirituality that leads to all the feminism, woke, liberal, hedonistic ideas that all of us here hate. There are many positions that are irrational that happen to be held by a lot of atheists, and I'm sure on many of those we'll agree. But the simple fact of being unconvinced is a correlate, not a causation, and is not irrational. Perhaps it is incorrect. I remain open to this possibility. I just don't feel that the breadth of evidence I've seen must conclude in a theistic God. Let's not forget that a deistic God is a entirely different category. So if we're defining God as something like the basis of truth or love or that which connects us all or the first cause, then we are having the wrong debate. I assumed we would be discussing the God of the Christian Bible, but any theistic God will do. Seems a bit obtuse or pedantic to claim that being unconvinced of that which you can only know through faith is the only rational position. I have much respect for Christians, Christianity, and Christian ethics, and I would actually like to help push these things further in society and to new people who don't already believe it. But this here is a necessary discussion, as people like Jimbob and the Crucible Crew can influence far and wide, and yet are turning down fans, money, and most importantly, making the Christian nationalism of which they speak an impossibility. You need the secular conservatives on your side. Otherwise, they won't care or will get swept up in the Democratic propaganda and vote the other way. We may disagree on a truth claim here, but there is so much more on which we do agree, and that entire demographics of Americans see differently than us, and they have voting power to implement their ideas. We have the same goals, whether or not we hold a God belief. We all want to push society in the same direction. So again, the notion that being unconvinced is an irrational position does not stand. Unless you are going to twist the definitions, I am speaking as a layman person. I'm unconvinced of the existence of God, and I don't think that is irrational. And I will concede my time.
All right. Thank you for that opening statement. And with that, we're going to hand the mic over to Jimbob. And Jimbob, whenever you're ready, I'll start the timer up with your voice.
All right, thanks. The question of tonight is whether the position atheism is a rational position. My opponent opened up by making ambiguous the difference between atheism and agnosticism and trying to pair them together. To be clear, atheist is a person who disbelieves. This is an active position in the existence of God or gods. An agnostic is a person who believes that nothing is known or could be known about the existence of nature of God. So they're kind of just holding a naive approach. Maybe they'll investigate it. Maybe they'll be convinced. To hold both of them together is not the topic of the debate. But either way, if you take an atheist approach or you take an agnostic approach, you have some of the same problems here. He says he's not convinced, which is a non-position. However, it's actually not a non-position. When you dig deeper, it turns out even the statement "I'm not convinced" assumes a bunch of things. It assumes that there's a person there. This guy, there's me, another guy. Can you mute yourself? You're typing.
Oh, sorry.
Convinced assumes that their persuasion is possible, and we're not just mechanical devices made of biological structures. You're assuming truth exists. You're assuming some sort of epistemic system to determine which beliefs are rational and which aren't. You're assuming rationality and reason and logic. These are all things you have to assume to even question whether something's rational or not. I would say atheism cannot even justify the term rational, what it is to be rational. In fact, if you hold an atheist position and you hold the position that you're merely a nominal biological machine, then each person has their distinct set of patterns that you would call rational in the mind, or in the brain, I should say. And so there isn't any universal called rational or non-rational. So in my opponent's opener, he didn't actually defend a position. He merely said, I'm not convinced. I could just as well say, well, based on your epistemic standard, I could say, I'm not convinced of your agnostic position, that not being convinced is a rational position. Convinced by what standard, right? What is it to convince you? Well, like I said, you're assuming a bunch of things have to be the case in order to be convinced, right? Are you holding a position that you're not just a cluster of atoms and molecules smashing together accidentally, uttering things from your mouth hole or from any other hole for that matter? Are we getting to something called truth? Is there something to get to? Is logic a thing in your worldview? I didn't hear anything. I heard a couple of non-positions, and then I heard a sort of affirmative political stance. Even if we got into the political avenue of this, an atheist position wouldn't be rational in making claims of what society should and shouldn't do. Atheism has no normative position on what we should or shouldn't do. In fact, it's all nominal. Again, it reduces to each person's individual wants and desires. And if someone wants to pursue the government and take a hold of its guns and, deploy some sort of a totalitarian regime, that would be completely consistent with atheism. So I'm not sure where he thinks he's going by appealing to traditional values. Which tradition? Traditional values. Which tradition is he referring to? Well, to be an atheist and to appeal to traditional values itself would be kind of contradictory. In order to reason, in believing in something that's worth believing in, and I'm wondering what my opponent is actually presenting as a system. Is he talking about evidence? Is he going to say, I need evidence to believe in God, and then you'll move me over? Just like being convinced, evidence itself has a whole slew of metaphysical assumptions that atheism cannot justify. So if it's the case that holding an atheistic position, which again is not what he said in his opener, the atheist position, to be clear, is a person who affirms, who holds a positive position that God doesn't exist, as opposed to an agnostic position, a person who believes that they just don't have enough information. They're not convinced about it. That's agnosticism. Atheism is a hard position, which you're defending tonight. Now, he doesn't have to actually believe in atheism. In fact, he's, based on interacting with him before, I don't think he actually does hold a strong atheist position. But for the sake of the argument tonight, I would probably recommend that he either abandons it and concedes to the debate and we can move on to a different topic, or he just takes on and puts on the hat of atheism, hard atheism. You can't mingle your own personal naive approach to atheism. You have to actually take the position and argue if it's rational or not. So how do we determine what's rational is probably a good question. Based on or in accordance with reason or logic. Well, if atheism can't even tell you what reason or logic is, what its ontology is, how could an atheist actually tell you what's in accordance with reason or logic? Their own worldview denies that there's a universal reality to reason and logic. In fact, each of our brains operating exactly how they're determined to is completely consistent with their worldview. We would all have our own system of what's in accordance with reason or logic, because the only arbiter for truth is our own experience, period. Whereas a theistic view or Christian view would actually make a bigger claim and say, well, the ontology of reason and logic, things like rationality, the fact that we have faculties and a will to pursue the truth and debate about it, the fact that we believe that we can be convinced of things, that further in politics, in our behaviors, that we ought to operate a certain way, or the fact that we think that human beings have some sort of value such that we could make laws derivative of that assumption that we have value. An atheist view has no justification for human value. In fact, from their worldview, they can't even really tell you what a human is independent of the other creatures. It's just a set of new molecules that are a bit more complex than the previous ones. Is that rational? No. Is it rational to say humans have rights? No, that's completely irrational from the atheist paradigm. So I'm not actually sure what my opponent's going to be defending tonight. I'm going to be attacking the position of atheism having lackluster, nearly absent grounding foundations and justifications for the preconditions to even argue this. Reason, logic, mind, information, meaning, universals, particulars, the fact that we can evaluate things. This is not consistent with an atheist view. An atheist view cannot tell you how it is the case we can actually evaluate things and come to true beliefs or false beliefs. In fact, atheism can't even tell you why we should pursue true beliefs versus false beliefs. You know why? Because if I held a false belief, but it actually was pragmatic and it produced results, the atheist would say, well, okay, you got me there. I mean, in that case, a false belief is pretty pragmatic, so I don't have any reason why you should abandon it. So even from the atheist position, if God even was not even real, you could argue from a Christian perspective or even a general theistic perspective that the heuristic as a tool is beneficial. In fact, the atheist might even say that we evolved to believe in God. Would it be rational to say we should move away from something we evolved to do quite well? No, that would be irrational. So I'm not sure where my opponent's going to go with this. There's really no defense of atheism in this particular arena called metaphysics. They have no justification for the truth. They have no reason to pursue the truth. They have no reason to avoid lies. They have no reason to order society in a particular way. And certainly if my opponent's holding an atheistic position, he has no justification other than his cultural preferences to then abide by or try to veer society toward a more Christian traditional standpoint. Even if he rejected the beliefs, he's actually appealing to something that he's arguing tonight is irrational, but it's rational to follow the traditions because they produce better outcomes. Well, which is it? Is it rational to believe in something that doesn't actually exist if it actually produces good outcomes? Is it rational if it produces good outcomes? He might have to say yes. I haven't met an atheist that doesn't say yes to that. So I'm interested in the topic. I'm totally fine getting into the political avenue of these topics because I think it's even more in my favor that an atheist arguing for certain lines of politics over the other lines of politics makes any sense at all. In fact, atheism doesn't have any coherent binding. You can't tell someone they're being a bad atheist, in other words. Well, Christianity and in other religions, even if it was false, it would be more rational to hold to a cohesive in-group set of standards and norms so you can hold each other accountable. Atheism can't hold each other accountable for anything. I don't find that's rational, especially if you're arguing for implementing law or arguing for some type of culture that we should be a certain way or should act a certain way. So I would love to start with, how does my opponent determine something's rational, a rational belief or not? And that's it.
All right. Thank you for that opening, Jimbob. And with that, we're going to get over into the 5-minute uninterrupted rebuttals. So, Lutch, whenever you're ready, I'll start the timer up with your voice.
Yeah, so I mean, I would love to know where we're getting the definition that atheist means that you affirm that God doesn't exist. Anybody, you could look at any public atheist published otherwise. This is the common definition that, yeah, maybe colloquially people use it to say that I believe God does not exist, but that's not what the word means. So you can claim that it's something that it's not, but it's not that. It is a lack of belief, and to that point, you said, yeah, I didn't give a worldview, I didn't give a perspective, yeah, because that's not what atheism is or does. We could talk about the different philosophies that would give me a worldview and where I would base logic on those things, but that has nothing to do with atheism. This is the problem that I had with Andrew Wilson. That it was 5 atheists versus Andrew Wilson, and it came in with a bunch of political prompts. I don't know if you guys understand the difference between a leftist and an atheist. They're not the same thing. And so you correct. I did not offer anything because atheism does not have a perspective. It does not have a worldview. As I said, it is not an ideology. It doesn't have any tenets. There are other things that must be filled in to talk about that, whether spiritual, political, or otherwise. This is like saying that I don't know. I'll come up with a better analogy later. But you're exactly right. You're attributing. You're trying to smuggle in a lot of things that, as I said in my opening, that a lot of atheists do hold these bad beliefs. Atheists do, follow irrational lines of thinking and all of that stuff. But that's not what atheism is. That's what atheists are doing. And so the being unconvinced, that is the end and the beginning. That is all. That is the whole thing. There's nothing else to it. I am unconvinced. So if that must be an irrational statement in order for you to win this debate. Yeah, that's the point. That's the point. Atheism has no worldview. All these things that you say, the atheist perspective, the secular worldview, those are things other than the secularity, other than the atheism. And you can, I can see my time.
All right, thank you for that rebuttal. And we're going to hand the mic over back to Jimbob. And whenever you're ready for your rebuttal, Jimbob, I'll start the timer up with your voice.
Okay. Well, it sounded like he's making no distinction between agnosticism and atheism, which is just false. He didn't give an actual definition. He just said atheism is the lack of belief in God. It's not necessarily being not convinced by it. It's just that you're holding a firm belief on what constitutes a strong belief and a weak belief. That itself assumes an epistemic system. Okay. Even if I granted what you just said twice, which is atheism has no worldview, it has no tenets, it doesn't provide anything, I would argue that definition, if that was true, which I'll grant it, that's irrational. A view that has no worldview, no tenets, nothing, doesn't provide anything. How could it be rational? You basically concede the debate if I just grant you your own definition of atheism, that it does nothing. There's nothing that it offers. Now, for him to say there's no difference between agnosticism and atheism, a whole slew of other atheists and agnostics would completely disagree with you. Look up the definitions. If agnostic and atheist are interchangeable, why are there two different words for them, first of all? Second of all, to hold a non-belief in God is to hold a system of epistemology. There's a reason you came to the non-belief in God. So to say atheism is simply a vacuumed position about God and nothing more, that's a lie. What is the case is if you're an atheist, you come to a specific position about God's existence, even if it's a non-convinced position. But to come to that position means you have an epistemic system that you use to come to that position, right? So if you used an epistemic system, in this case, you're the atheist, if you want to particularize it and say each atheist is different, fine. We're talking about you, the atheist, tonight. If you come to the position that you're unconvinced, I'm going to ask you what the system that you're using to become unconvinced by God, and I'm going to question that system and see if that's rational.
All right. Ed, you didn't want to use the rest of the time there?
What else is there? I mean, just look up the definitions. Can you give me a definition between atheism and agnostic and it says the same exact thing? Because that's what you're arguing. I would just reject that. But even if I allowed you to smash the two words together for the sake of the debate, what you just said is before that is atheism has no worldview. It has no tenets. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't provide anything. Okay, well, if I could demonstrate that a position that offers nothing, has no worldview on anything, is it rational to operate in a world that's completely inconsistent with not having a worldview? No, it's irrational to be an atheist. If what an atheist means is to have no worldview, if by my own opponent's standards, it means to not have a worldview, how is it rational to operate in the world and operate in politics and argue for things if by your own standard you said atheism has no worldview, no tenets, doesn't believe in anything, it doesn't provide anything? Why would an atheist be rational to say, let's say, human rights exist? That would be irrational from an atheist position, right? Well, sorry, if you want to talk about politics and atheism, you have no standard as an atheist to argue we should do this, should do that, because that would then change your view into something more than what you're saying atheism is. Now, the problem with your view is you're going to have to assume these bigger metaphysical things without the belief in God. What I'm saying is you can't do that. You can't even tell me why we should value other humans in society before we get into your political remedies, right? You can't even tell me what's distinct about a human being from the other beasts. That's an atheist entailment. The entailment of atheism is, well, nihilism, not just epistemic, but teleological nihilism. Atheism has no teleology. Now, even by your own standard, that you would say a dysteleological view as a human being would be irrational as soon as you start participating with other humans, because you're arguing that there's no purpose for anything. And at the same time, you're saying we should get this stuff done. We should do this. We should organize society. We should protect these people. We should stop war. All of those statements under an atheist view are irrational and inconsistent with the atheist view of nihilism.
All right. Thank you for that rebuttal. And with that, we're going to get into the open floor. Whoever wants to start it off, I'll start the timer with your voice. And thank you for both being here.
I just want to clarify with the atheist agnostic thing. Are you holding that there's no distinction between atheist and agnostic or not?
No, I'm glad that you asked, so that wasn't a purposeful straw man, but actually double straw man me. So no, I didn't say that they are interchangeable. That is why I am an agnostic atheist, because they are different words. I do not know means is the agnostic part, and I am not convinced is the atheist part. Then when I said there is no worldview,
right there.
Can I finish?
Right? No. 1 second. Definitions first.
Yeah,
definitions first. If there's a distinction between atheist and agnostic, but you're saying you're an agnostic atheist, I'm not sure what you're saying when you say that.
Because they're not mutually exclusive. I don't know. I'm not convinced. Which part of that do you not understand?
Agnostic.
Which God do I believe in?
Why would you add?
Which God do I believe in?
Look, why would you add?
Which God do I believe in?
I'm asking. Stop interrupting. Why would you add?
You just did it to me.
Why would you add the atheist part if you could just say you're agnostic?
Because it's more accurate.
How does it add anything? Tell me what it adds.
Because you can be agnostic on a whole bunch of stuff, bro. Do you know how many rooms are in my condo? So you're agnostic on how many rooms are in my condo. That has nothing to do with God or anything. So I am not a strong atheist, so I'm being more specific in the sense that I'm an agnostic atheist.
If you said I'm agnostic...
that was the first straw man. That was the first straw man.
Dude,
the second straw man was that you said, I have no worldview. That is not at all what I said.
You said
I said atheism has no worldview.
Are you defending atheism?
Yes, but the atheism
That's what we're talking about, dude.
Okay, but that it doesn't. So being
we're not talking about you, bro. We're talking about atheism.
Okay, so then being
does the title say agnostic atheism? What is the title of the debate?
It doesn't matter.
Yes, it does.
No, I'm saying even if you want to go with straight.
What is the title of the debate?
It's not irrational. Being
what is
an
the
atheist
title of the
is
debate?
a rational position.
Does it say agnostic atheism?
No.
Okay, you think I would have pushed back if you said agnostic atheism? Yes, I would have. You said you were talking about atheism. So
okay, great. There's different kinds of atheism.
Great. If atheism is a different word than agnostic, and you have to actually assume that, given that you're using both the words, what I'm asking is, well, the topic of the debate is atheism. Is atheism itself, right? Not agnosticism. I would have pushed back on that if you said agnostic atheism, but the title said atheism. Okay. Now I hold that atheism is a pretty firm position on the non-existence of God. It's basically, I don't believe in God. It's not, I'm unconvinced. It's no, I actually firmly hold that it's a completely an insane position and there's no way around it. Agnostic is, oh, there could be a way around it. Maybe I just haven't heard it. I wasn't convinced yet. That's agnostic. So the audience and myself are not. How could it be a straw man? I'm literally defining words.
I will tell you. Because that's like saying, well, if you're conservative, then you must be a MAGA loving, Trump dick sucking.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is. There's different types of conservatives. You're saying that because you are conservative, that some conservatives are like that. That being conservative means that you must be that. Just because some atheists are militant and believe that no God exists doesn't mean that that's the entirety of the definition. You're going to try to push it into this corner.
Bring up your definition of atheism.
So that's exactly why.
Bring up your definition of atheism. Any definition. Bring it up. Google it right now.
I gave you that definition.
No. I don't want a proprietary. I want a researched position, a definition of atheism right now from you.
All right, okay.
Look up any definition of atheism, and then look up the word agnosticism and the difference between atheism. Is there a difference between atheism and being agnostic? You tell me.
Richard Dawkins defined atheism is the belief that there are no God, which is more than just the lack of belief in God. Okay, so he is further on his own scale, but again, he gave the scale of the 7 different parts, and you can be a de facto atheist, you could be a weak atheist, you could be a strong atheist. So again,
is there a difference? Now bring up agnosticism, and if it's different than atheism.
It is. I was the one who said it. You were the one who conflated that they were the same thing.
What are you defending tonight?
Atheism.
Are you defending
is agnostic atheism? Not atheism.
Are you defending agnostic?
We could just ask each. So agnostic atheism is not atheism.
No, agnosticism is just agnostic, right? That's its own word. You don't need the word atheism.
All right. You know what? Fine. Let's. I'll give you that. You're
defending a firm belief that God doesn't exist.
No, I'm not. But since
then you don't know what you're debating tonight.
I definitely know what I'm debating. You don't know what you're debating. But since you don't know, we'll go to where you can understand things.
Cool. Is the disbelief? Let's just say, for the sake of argument, because it's not you, right? I'm not actually pinning this on you as a belief. I'm asking you to step in to the atheist paradigm.
Sure.
For the sake of argument. Can you hold for a second? Let's start with the hardest then. If you're going to sell me a scale gradient, then it's fair that we start with the most strictest form of atheism.
So you admit that there's a scale?
No, I'm granting you. I don't think there's a scale. I'm granting you
so Richard Dawkins just
no. I'm not. I don't care about Richard Dawkins, dude. So I don't care. So if it's the case that someone holds a very strict position of atheism, that is to say, they affirm the position God does not exist. Not I'm unconvinced. God does not exist, right? Okay, is that an atheist?
So fine. Yes, that is an atheist.
Okay.
But
is that rational?
I will grant you that.
Is that a rational position?
Yes.
Okay. Tell me how it's a rational position for someone, why you think it's a rational position for someone to say God does not exist. Certainly they'd be coming to that conclusion using some system, right?
Sure.
Okay. And like I said in my opener, rational means based on or in accordance with reason or logic, right? Mm-hmm. So you tell me how the hardest, firmest atheist comes to the position that no God exists and how it's in accordance with reason and logic.
So I mean, even just the basic notion of like day one atheism. Well, how come God lets if God existed, bad things wouldn't happen? That is
that's rational.
Yeah, that's a rational.
Okay,
position.
Let's start with that. So if God exists, bad things wouldn't happen. Is there an absolute standard for what constitutes a bad thing, or is that an opinion?
It depends on your worldview, but are you asking under my worldview or are you asking under your worldview?
Is it a bad thing that I have to eat to live?
No.
Oh, really? I think it is.
Okay.
So I'm reasonable to believe God doesn't exist merely because I have to eat and breathe oxygen to live. Is that rational?
If you think that's bad, then yeah, you'd be wrong.
So that's no. Is that rational?
Yes.
To come to the conclusion, God doesn't exist because I have to eat and breathe air.
Mm-hmm.
That's rational.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you conclude that God doesn't exist from the fact that I have to eat? If it's rational. How do you conclude?
I didn't say that is. You're trying to make a jump. You just said, is that a logical point? Fine,
is it rational?
Point. I didn't say not wanting to eat is enough to justify a belief in or non-belief in God.
Listen, rational means based in accordance with reason and logic. You said not the best, but you started with this. Bad thing happened. I asked you what constitutes a bad thing. Could it be anything? Hold on. You said bad thing happened. Okay, the meme. And so I said, oh, interesting. I define it as a bad thing that I have to breathe air and eat, and I can't swim underwater forever. I think that is a good enough reason to say God doesn't exist. Why? Because if God existed, I would be able to do everything I wanted, right? And to you, that's a rational conclusion, right?
Sure.
If it's a rational conclusion, give me the premises that make that conclusion follow.
I don't know. I don't hold that belief, but you
just said it's rational. I didn't ask if you held the belief. I said, is it rational in accordance with logic and reasoning? If it's in accordance with logic and reasoning, then it would need to be the case that you could present an argument where that conclusion followed.
If God existed, bad things wouldn't happen. Bad thing happened, therefore God doesn't exist.
And that follows.
Yeah.
Right. That's affirming the consequent. You know that's a logical fallacy, right?
Don't know what that means.
Okay. Well, if it's affirming the consequent and it's a logical fallacy, are logical fallacies in accordance with reason and logic?
No.
Okay. Well, then it's not rational. Do you concede that part?
No. I mean, could you explain
You
what
don't
that is?
concede that. Okay.
I just said I don't know what it is. If you explain
If it
it,
rains,
like,
if
oh,
it
okay,
rains-
then you're right.
If it rains out, it's wet outside. It's wet outside. It rained. Is that logical to you?
Sure.
That's logical to you?
Oh, you mean no? Meaning if it's wet outside, it must have
follow?
rained.
Yeah.
Is that the question? Okay, misunderstood. No, obviously.
So that's irrational, right?
Right.
Yeah. So that's called affirming the consequent. If you agree affirming the consequent is a logical fallacy, then the bad thing happen is irrational, right? Because you don't know. Yeah. What do you mean? How so? You said
it's wrong.
If God,
I don't think it's irrational.
What do you mean? Anything could be a bad thing. Do you understand that? Anything that someone doesn't like. For instance, the guy accidentally put pineapple on my pizza. Therefore, God doesn't exist. That's rational to you, right?
Say that again. What?
If I order pizza and I didn't order pineapple, but it shows up with pineapple, I could say, from your worldview that you're defending, I could say that's enough to say God doesn't exist because I don't like pineapple. Why did that happen? Right?
So pedantic. Okay, so I was trying to just go with this. I thought we would, but okay. Let's say children have leukemia. Again, I thought you weren't going to go, but whatever. So kids have leukemia, therefore God doesn't exist because God wouldn't let that happen.
Okay, and how did you determine God wouldn't let that happen?
Because I was taught that God was through the church that God was all good.
Well, no. If God's nature is all good, why would it follow he has to stop things that you don't like?
Because that, what do you, I don't
it sounds like you're God. It sounds like if God was real, I'd be God, right? It'd be like, if God was real, everything that happened in reality would be in accordance with my preferences. That's what you're really arguing.
No.
Yeah, you are. I just gave you the same category of a problem, which is with pizza, just to trivialize it. If anything, I don't like that.
You brought up
You're interrupting me. You're interrupting me.
You've been rambling, bro. I'm trying to understand what you're saying.
I'm not rambling.
Just let him finish. Just let him finish. Yeah.
So, if I don't like leukemia in kids, by the way, who cares? Kids or adults? Why is it worse because it's kids? Why? I mean, that's just like you're like special pleading for kids. What if there was leukemia for crabs? Would it be bad? God doesn't exist. Leukemia for crabs is God doesn't exist from that too, or
sure.
Yeah. So leukemia for cockroaches, God doesn't exist.
No, I'm being obviously.
What do you mean? No. What do you mean? Be consistent. Leukemia, cockroach leukemia. Why doesn't that follow that God doesn't exist? Cockroach leukemia. Why?
Because we don't care about humans in the same way, or cockroaches in the same way we do as humans. Again, we're coming back to the notion of being wrong versus being irrational. You are bringing up these very obvious examples that are wrong, and trying to say that my belief is irrational based on the wrongness of your belief.
Okay, so if you just stated, which I put in my opener, if there's a distinction from an atheistic view between a crab and a human, can you tell me the symmetry breaker between any other animal and humans from an atheistic view?
What do you mean by the atheistic view?
Are you defending an atheistic view, a godless view tonight?
No, You're not defending a philosophical position that God does not exist. So
that's the same thing, dude. So if you're defending a philosophical position that God doesn't exist, from your godless philosophical position, can you tell me why humans have value but other creatures don't have the same value as humans?
Because I feel like it. What are you getting at?
That's rational to you, right?
What are you getting at?
I'm getting at you don't have a justification for your value judgment. You just said I feel like it. Is that rational?
I'm coming from this.
It's not rational.
Point. This is my point. You're trying to pin down all of the things that an atheist believes to atheism. All of these things are outside of atheism.
What are you talking about? I just asked you if you hold an atheist view and you draw values.
Oh yeah, that's right. We got to stay in the corner of the only where Jimbob gets to win.
No. I
forgot we were ignoring all the other definitions of atheism. Okay. My bad.
Look, I started with the strongest one, right? Would you argue that an atheist might say they don't believe in God because there's no evidence?
I don't believe in God because there's no evidence. Yeah.
Is that, I mean, would you hold that position or?
Yeah.
Okay. And you think that's rational, right?
Yes.
Okay. And do you believe in human rights?
Sure.
And is there any physical, empirical evidence for human rights?
Physical evidence for human rights? No, they're
Oh,
concepts. They're
interesting.
not tangible
Oh.
things.
Oh, they're concepts. So it's totally
Right.
rational to believe in imaginary concepts called rights, even though they're intangible and you can't see them or measure them. Hold on. But it's irrational to believe in a immaterial mind that ground all things. Can you tell me why belief in rights based on?
I didn't say that.
Dude, I'm asking you a question.
Yeah, but you're asking me a question about something that I didn't say.
Can you tell me why it's rational to believe in something non-existent like human rights, but it's irrational?
They are existent. They're just not tangible.
Where are they? How do they exist?
Do you know what tangible means?
Yes. Where do they exist?
They are ideas. They are concepts. They don't.
So is
just
God.
because you can't touch something. Okay, great.
From-
There's not all things that are not tangible. Like,
Okay.
you are making these weirdest conflations
So
here.
it's rational. to
Oh, well,
believe
you
in
can't
God.
touch this thing, and you can't
Okay.
touch God. Therefore, they both exist, or they neither exist. What are you
Let me-
talking about?
I'm going to tell you what I'm talking about. The audience can follow this. You're the only one not following this. What I'm
Yeah,
drawing
they're
out
following you
is
anywhere.
I'm asking you your criterion for determining whether something's rational to believe in or not. And I asked, would you say it's
What does that
rational
have to do with the prompt?
Let me talk, dude. Is it rational, I asked, to say God doesn't exist because you don't see any evidence? You said, yes, that's rational. I said, do you believe in human rights? You said, yes. I said, oh, you do believe in something without evidence, physical evidence. Okay. So you believe in the concept of rights and you think it's rational to believe in the concept of rights, right?
Yes.
Okay. So can you tell me why do you think it's rational to believe in the concept of rights, but it's irrational to believe in God because of the lacking of evidence?
Because
If
of
they
the
both lack
evidence.
evidence.
It doesn't lack evidence. We can see that people get arrested for this, that, and the
No,
other.
that's
People-
force.
Okay, force is the manifestation of those rights.
No.
Then
'cause
why is there force there then?
you can use force.
Why is there force there then?
I'm telling you the distinction. You could use force without rights, right?
Sure.
Okay, so force is force. You're saying, well, no, there's proof of rights because there's force. I can point to places where they use force and there's no rights. So you can't point to force.
That has
to say there's
nothing
rights.
to do with what I said.
I just asked you the evidence
specific.
Oh my God,
You're
dude.
asking about how do we know that rights exist, and I
I
saying
asked
that
for
you use the
evidence.
Force. The evidence that the rights exist is the force that is used to
No.
back them up. Just
No.
because force exists outside of rights doesn't mean rights
No.
aren't a thing.
Tell me, okay, there's two places.
You disagree?
No, yeah, I disagree.
Okay.
There's two places that use force. One doesn't believe in rights and one does. They both just use force for the same exact things.
Okay.
Tell me how you determine one place has rights and the other doesn't.
The government, the society, the culture.
That doesn't tell me anything. How do you
Yes, it
verify
does. What do you
rights
mean?
exist?
You don't know
Dude,
the different.
you're
You
not
don't know that
listening to my
in the
question.
UK that there's no right to free speech or right to
Look,
the Second
that's
Amendment.
just
like
force.
why?
Okay.
Okay, great, but okay,
That's just
that's
force.
not what I asked you.
Well, look, I'm
That's
asking.
not what I
I'm
asked.
asking, dude. I didn't ask for evidence that force exists. I agree, force exists because
I
it's,
know that. I am telling
Listen,
you.
dude, stop
that
interrupting me.
Oh my God! You just go ahead. You just go ahead.
Yeah, thank you.
Jimbob
Put your mic away.
Show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hold on. This is gonna. So I'm
Gonna go off the
hearing
rails?
what Jim Bob's asking you. He's asking you, right? Is if the concept of rights is a rational belief, why is the concept of God not a rational belief? Does that make it easier for you to understand what he's saying?
So is that what you're asking? Why is one belief rational and the other is not?
You said it's rational to deny God's existence because of the lack of evidence, and I asked you, why do you affirm rights if there's no physical evidence for rights?
And again, I disagree with the notion that I think that the force we see and the processes that we see are the evidence that those rights exist. When those rights are infringed upon, then we see the force being implemented to address that. That doesn't mean that all force must be connected to rights.
Okay, so again, you're pointing to men with guns doing things, okay, right? You're saying men with guns doing stuff is proof that rights, the concept, exists. And I go, where? They're just men with guns doing stuff. So if there's two groups of societies, and they're both doing the same exact thing, men with guns doing stuff, you haven't told me how one.
Okay, can I ask you a question that maybe will help me answer?
You just interrupt right before I ask you a question.
I'm honestly trying to get this on the rails. If I ask you a question, you can answer and then show me how that applies to what I'm saying. Is that fair?
Is it fair for you to not answer my question and ask me one?
I'm trying to answer your question based on my understanding. I get it. You're a smart guy. You know this stuff better.
What do you think my question is?
I don't know yet. That's why I'm trying to ask you.
Maybe I can help build this. I have a different way. Maybe I can help build this. TheIndianJesus, do the Crusades give you physical evidence that God exists?
No.
What? Okay.
So this is what he's comparing it. Like the force of the Crusades doesn't mean that God exists, just like the force of the law doesn't mean that rights exist. That's what he's trying to build here for you.
Yeah. Would you say that doesn't
follow that?
Yeah, it does. It follows the same.
How is we're seeing a direct effect? We're seeing a direct effect.
Yeah, the Crusades are a direct effect
of what?
Belief in God.
Oh my God.
Are the Crusades a direct effect of the belief in God?
Yeah, but it's not the only. I'm talking about a one-to-one, a direct causal factor. There was other cultural factors. There were other things, just like I said with the rights. But in this case, we have a metaphysical, supernatural, whatever you want to call it, claim that is built in.
Are rights metaphysical?
Yeah.
So they're not material, right?
No.
Okay. On what basis should an atheist believe rights exist?
Depends on what their political philosophy is.
Are you an atheist tonight?
Yep.
On what basis should you hold that rights exist by your own epistemic system?
Utilitarianism.
No. Rights themselves, like, do they have an actual ontology or are they illusory?
I'd probably say they're illusory. I'm not sure I fully understand the question, but...
Okay, illusory meaning they don't actually exist, just the concept that's acted on exists.
Yeah, okay.
So if you just believe that rights don't actually exist and they're illusory, but the actions on the illusory concept, those actions do exist, I agree with you, but you're still holding to an atheistic position, right? Is atheism rational? What I'm trying to draw out is you're saying it's rational to deny God's existence because of its immateriality and an illusory nature. I'm saying your belief in rights should be just as irrational by the same token.
Okay, so then if you're going to make the comparison to rights, can you then prove? Are you saying that rights don't exist, or you're saying rights do exist?
I'm saying rights don't exist. And the only concept we have of rights would be tied to a Christian paradigm anyway, which would be more aligned with like an entitled position based on your duties. Like even biblically, the term rights really points to the status of man in the world. For instance, we are stewards of the land and animals, right? From that position, I would colloquially grant the term rights, but I wouldn't use it in the Enlightenment way. I wouldn't say you just have an entitlement, which is another problem with atheism, which is most atheists actually appeal to rights. They're always whining about rights.
Yeah, but that's leftism. That's not atheism.
I understand, but they're mostly atheists, though. So
okay, but it's that again.
I'm saying there's a
okay, fine, but we're getting away from the rationality part of that.
Okay.
Again,
how does atheism, let's go to that, rationality. How does atheism account for rationality itself?
It doesn't. It's not. It doesn't claim to.
Yeah, I know. So atheism doesn't have
That's like saying how does being a dog owner account for the basis of reality?
Listen.
I've been listening, bro. Jesus
You're not
Christ.
listening. You're not listening. Okay. If atheism, by your own admission, doesn't account for rationality, how is it you can hold a position about God's existence being rational or not if you don't even know what it means to be? You can't even account for rationality. What is rationality under an atheist view? What is it?
Again, I don't know what you mean by an atheist view. I'm taking on your definition of this must be a affirmative belief, but I don't buy into that. I don't believe that is. I don't know what that is.
Let me help you. If rationality,
leftist or whatever.
if rational means in accordance with reason and logic, do you agree with that definition?
I'm sorry, I was reading the super chat. Could you say that again, please?
Rational meaning based on or in accordance with reason and logic. Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So if an atheist says, I agree with reason and logic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, under a non-God view, isn't it fair for someone to ask, how does atheism account for reason and logic?
I guess it would be a fair question, but I mean, again, depending on the other aspects of your belief system, it would be a different answer. So I can give you my answer for me, but I can't tell you what another random strong atheist is going to think.
Okay,
you're trying again. I'm giving you all this grace by moving this into the tiny little corner so that you can have your debate because you're unwilling to have a real conversation. But really? I bet I can't answer what every other atheist thinks.
I didn't ask
again, this comes back to the same thing of you not understanding that all these things you're talking about leftism, you're talking about wokeism, you're talking about feminism, you're talking about hedonism, you're talking about all these things. Wokeism. But that's what I know you didn't say anything about them because you're calling it atheism. You're calling it atheism. All these bad things. All you're saying.
I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything about bad things. I'm not
saying that you said those words. I'm saying what you are talking about. Not really, because I remember that it doesn't have to do with the prompt.
It does. If the prompt is atheism rational, you said it's fair to ask, well, under the view that you're holding, in this case, you are the atheist, you, Indian, I want to know from you how your particular atheistic view, which is to say, I'm not sure about God's existence, how do you account for reason and logic? What is it under your paradigm? What is it?
So I mean, it depends on, we start with Cartesian logic and build from there.
No. I didn't ask what you start with. What is the ontology of reason and logic? Like, what do you think it's mechanical? Do you think it's like,
I don't know.
You think
I'm agnostic.
Oh, you're agnostic. So do you think that you're a biological machine strictly, or do you hold a spiritual belief?
Yeah.
You do hold a spiritual belief.
Yeah, I don't know how to define it, but yeah, sure. I believe there's something.
Okay. Do you think it's irrational to deny a spiritual aspect of your existence?
Do I think it's irrational to deny? Yeah. That's probably okay. Yeah, I would say so.
Okay. Would you agree that there is a hardline atheist position that even if you're not holding tonight, there is a hardline atheist position that would deny anything like spiritual, because that would be supernatural, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's specifically why my whole opening was about not that tiny piece of atheism, because I agree that is not my belief, and that also is not rational.
Okay, then what separates you from the hardline atheists on the threshold? Then how do you know you're at a 6 or a 7 or a 4 or a 10 or whatever? How do you know that?
Because I am, as you saw from the last time I was here, I am open to the existence of God, the ethics of God. I don't have, I went through a militant atheist phase when, I was young and stuff. But, you grow up and you learn that, secular humanism doesn't work. And unfortunately, Christianity is the best we have. And so.
Okay, that's fair enough. So if you yourself, instead of tearing apart the hardline atheists, which, sounds like that's easy enough for both of us to do, and you hold a spiritual position, you're going to separate yourself from all the atheists who think you're crazy for holding an experiential conclusion of spirituality. Right?
Now you're getting it. I'm not like them. I'm the...
Yeah, I understand. But you did agree to the atheist, but I'm fine moving off of that because it doesn't sound like you don't even defend that view in your life.
No, I don't. That's what I said in my opening. Okay. And then you decided for the last 30 minutes that we need to stay on this specific type of hardline atheism because that's the only type of atheist that you want to talk about, even though other types of atheists exist, but you want to address that.
Okay, that's fine. No, I'm fine moving away as long as we knocked out that. What did we knock out the 10 out of 10 and the 9 out of 10 atheists, or did we go to 8? Are you at 7? Are you at 6? Where are you?
Out of the 7, I'm probably a 5.
Okay, 5. So you're not even you're moving away.
Yeah.
Do you think it's rational to move away from atheism?
Yeah, I mean, depending on the type of atheism and depending on the reality of. Depending on reality, yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, we agree. It's
like I said, you might convert me by the end of this debate. I am totally open.
Well, I did.
No, you
I
just
don't-
knocked down the atheist that I'm not.
I don't put too much weight on these, but I did 2 weeks ago have an image of you visiting Divine Liturgy. I'm just saying, I just thought of it. And I was like, whoa, that guy. Because I was really aggressive with you on a panel, but I actually was like, I like that guy. I think he's actually seeking for something, and he's laughing at these other materialists, so he understands.
Yes.
So I'm glad you're moving away from atheism. Okay. So if you're moving away from atheism, and I agree that's rational, at least we could agree there's some threshold, even if it's ambiguous, where atheism is irrational. But you're also saying a movement away from atheism seems to be rational.
Yeah.
So if a movement away from
maybe
atheism,
the truth is somewhere, between I believe in God and I believe there's no God, like an agnostic atheist would think.
I wonder though if that's a true dichotomy, because what could you call in the middle? Because I hold a different view. If you believe
In the middle of what?
Like truth being in the middle, what I mean by that is if you hold a hard atheist view, you actually believe that truth is like in flux and that it's kind of built up from humans from the bottom up.
Well, again, that's a different philosophy that a lot of atheists may hold.
I understand, but generally speaking, I've doing this for years, and they hold to. I actually believe a true dichotomy. I believe that there's only two options: either epistemology, knowledge itself, is theonomous, which is to say it has always existed, and you and I, through processes, through experience and logic and reasoning, are discovering it, versus autonomous, which is that we're fabricating it. We're just making up a story about truth, and we're filling in the gap of time called our life, trying to pretend we're arguing for something, but really we're under the impression that it's not actually real. I hold that it's actually real. And so if you agree with me that we're discovering truth, this is one step forward to God existing. Because if you're discovering truth, is it fair to say if you discover something, it means it existed in a way?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So
this is why, if I may, this is why I am not, I put in the thing with my opening about a deistic God, about the first cause, or the truth that connects us all, or that is a different thing than Yahweh of the Bible, and that may very well exist. I don't think that we as humanity, or me personally, have access to that right now, but I don't think that it's impossible that we could one day discover, there is something.
Okay, cool. But if there was a God, and it was a being God, a personal God, it would make sense that God would reveal truth to us. Because in the same sense, an atheist would say, well, if God exists, this bad thing wouldn't happen. You would say, well, if God exists, certainly it wouldn't be unreasonable, let's say, for him to not make it known. Wouldn't that be fair? Like, make himself known if God existed. We could certainly expect him to.
Yeah, that's a very core part of my atheism is I believe in divine hiddenness. And I think that if there is a God, that he would show himself to people. So the fact that someone like myself, who was born in the Catholic Church, confirmed in the Methodist Church, was a full believer until I actually sat down and read the Bible and learned about other types of philosophy, then after my militant atheist phase, I genuinely, and still to this day, tried to come back to what is the truth, regardless of what I believe right now, or yesterday, or any other thing. So
did you pursue orthodoxy at all, or you just went with Catholicism and that other thing?
Yeah, just Catholicism, and then.
Is there any reason you're obviously around and you're drawn to Orthodox spaces, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm attracted to the political message that you guys are putting out, and that's why I think that even though there's no way that anybody's going to see that I win this debate, but I think it's an important discussion, because I think that you guys are shooting yourselves in the foot, and instead of just lumping in the leftist with the and all that with atheists, that there can be a better way forward, where the cool atheist, the good atheist, the based atheist, whatever the fuck you want to call it, can be part of the club, and we are going to have a much better time speaking to people who are center left than you guys are.
I'm saying ultimately that goal, from your position, I'm going to go ahead and challenge you. If you think that's a good thing, I'm going to say you don't have a fully exhaustive worldview to say why that's a good thing, right?
To say what's a good thing that
we should sort of like compromise and pull even center people who are a little more reasonable than the blue hairs into our umbrella and say we're moving toward this, right? From my position, you have to be pretty strong with the position. You have to say it's orthodoxy or nothing. And so what I'd like to hold people to is like, if you have this concept of conservatism, but you have a very weak, let's say, foundation for like lower C Christianity, the reason that I would say that you didn't adopt into the other forms of Christianity that you pursued is because they end up being too weak for you. Weak stances.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Right. Right. So if you agree with that,
so then let's take that then. So let's say, especially the Methodist Church, because I mean, number one, I was younger when I was in the Catholic Church, and I was in like 8th grade, and then we moved over to a Methodist church, and that was ironically, even though there was a weaker church, I got way more into things because it wasn't about, it was just about come and hang out and stuff. And so let's say that I grew up in that Methodist church. And the whole time I had all of these doubts about God, and they're just like keep coming back. And at that point, I just was going involved, and I just was not convinced. How then would that be?
Why? Because you're like me. Well, no, it's not. No, that was rational.
That wouldn't be. That would be rational.
Yeah, it was rational for you.
There we go. Thank you.
No, yeah, no, but that's actually, we are the first to say all of those heterodox places, we call them atheist factories. We would grant that to you.
Okay, but again, so then those people would be atheists and they would have a rational position. So it can't be the case that being an atheist is an irrational position.
No. It's rational for particular instances for people who look at, let's say, heterodox Protestantism and all the rest.
I think that's the debate, homie. I think that's the debate, homie.
No, it's not. To say that some atheist on a particular position instance can
be rational doesn't mean that it's...
No. I didn't say atheists can't be rational. I said the position itself. For instance, there's a problem here. If an atheist pursues Christianity, for instance, the atheist godless position doesn't actually have a reason to pursue what they're investigating. That's not rational.
Okay. Agreed.
So if an atheist comes along and they go, well, I have a spiritual reality to myself, and I want to figure out what the proper paradigm for this spiritual experience is, because I reject materialism. I reject that I'm just a cog in a machine. I reject that there's no purpose to this. That's not consistent with my experience. They want to find something, right? I'm saying holding an atheistic position doesn't give you any reason why you should pursue that inclination at all. It doesn't give you a reason for it. It's distinctly illogical.
Right. But from that point, I agree with you that atheism doesn't give that to you. But the point that I think you're missing is that you can be an atheist, and even though the atheism doesn't give that to you, you can buy into other philosophies that would.
Not atheism. Like I said, a movement.
How are those
a movement.
Not all philosophies are based on God.
I understand, but a movement away from atheism would be the start. So we both are in alignment.
That's not what I'm asking you. That's not what no. That's not what I'm saying.
This is what you're saying. You're saying this is what I'm saying. If someone's an atheist, they have no reason to pursue the truth.
You cannot make that statement. You don't know what other beliefs those people. I don't. This is what I'm telling you, brother. The atheism doesn't. This is like saying the dog owner's perspective on tax evasion. What's the dog owner's perspective on tax evasion?
No. That's an opinion. We're not talking about opinions. We're talking about a standard for truth, right? So look, I'll make it simple for you.
The analogy I'm making is that you're making the same mistake there. The reason why it doesn't make sense, that question doesn't make sense, is the same reason why your question here doesn't make sense.
Is the truth of the matter opinion based, or is it objective?
It's objective.
Okay. If the atheist, I don't care who you are, you or any other atheist, what I'm saying is that the worldview without a God cannot justify truth itself. They have no absolute standard for truth. Is it rational for someone who has no absolute standard for truth to pursue truth?
Probably not. But again, I disagree with the notion that because you are an atheist, you can't have a basis for truth.
Good. Give me a counterexample of how you would determine that, because you can't.
I mean, again, off the top of my head, I don't know. But are you claiming there's wait? Are you claiming there's no schools of thought that do not include a God?
No, you cannot ground absolute truth because of the nature. Let me answer.
I know you believe that. The question is, are there any philosophies that exist?
I'll tell you.
Because I can't name it off the top of my head.
I'm trying to answer you. I'm trying to answer you. It's a disjunctive syllogism. You can't, there's no other non-God views, right? There's no non-God view that can ground absolute truth because of what the nature of truth actually is. You and I agree, right, that truth would be at least conceptual in this conversation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not found in nature. It's not, you can't pick it up in the wilderness, right? There's no object called truth you can hold, right? Pick it up, weigh it, right?
No, so that was in accordance with reality.
Right, but is it absolute and universal?
I don't know.
Well, to say no would be a contradiction. So do you agree that if it's a contradiction to say truth isn't universal would be to say a universal statement about truth?
Okay. When you put it, yeah, because just to clarify, there's different things that may be true now. That doesn't mean it was always true. But if we're saying the truth itself,
yeah, yes, even in that case, if we were wrong about something, when we're right about it and we come to higher resolution, we're actually discovering something in higher resolution, what we call the truth, right? So if truth is conceptual and absolute and universal, and I agree with you for the sake of this debate, isn't it the case that concepts are habitually tied to a mind?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not that big of a leap to say if truth is absolute and conceptual and concepts are tied to a mind, if humans discover truth and it has some type of existence for us to discover, then it has to exist in a type of mind for us to discover it. So a theistic view, even generally speaking, would say, well, like a divine conceptual view would be human beings have the capacity through their experience and their metaphysics and philosophy to discover something called truth. But to discover it necessitates that it existed before us. If you and me agree with that, any atheist, they might even bite the bullet on that premise. But once I skip to the conclusion that concepts are tied to a mind, they get really squirrely because they know that if truth is a concept from their view and it's universal and it precedes their own existence and all human minds, but it's mind dependent, they've necessitated a mind before them, and they really don't like this.
Can you tell me more about that? I have not found an issue with people seeing that there can't be that you find atheists say that there can't be an independent mind?
Yeah, before humans. Because
I told you I ain't one of them. I told you I
understand. I understand, but if you agree with me, I'm saying there's no way to agree with my syllogism and maintain a non-God position, because the new definition, at least preliminary definition for God, would be this universal mind. So if there are things like logic, which we agree exist, information, knowledge, truth, propositions, universals, and the rest, and these exist not like trees. You and I are on the same page. They don't exist.
Yeah, but
like
that's
trees.
Not a theistic God. That's a
deistic.
Well,
Hold on. Yeah, even if you started deistic, like really vague,
right,
it still necessitates a mind. And so even if I got you or anyone else to at least step away from a non-mind preceding us, then the question is, who is this mind? Who is it? Isn't that fair?
Yeah, good question.
So that would mean if it was fair to pursue a who is this universal mind? Now we're into another level, which is truth is grounded in a person, of actual being, a being, not a tree, not a rock, not the universe, not floaty stuff, an actual being.
Why is that? Why does that necessitate that?
Because concepts are associated with a mind,
right?
And what we know of minds is that they're associated with being.
Okay, yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So then look, I'm not going to push you any further on this. I invite you, because you explored these other things, and I give you good reason. I agree with you. You probably have good reason to reject Methodist and Roman Catholicism and a lot of other things you could look at, especially in the West. My invitation to you is, perhaps your pursuit of knowledge is drawing you to orthodox people like me or Andrew or the rest, and you're actually interested in this topic.
I've been
And because
long before you guys are around.
I understand, but you're more interested because we're pushing it. The rest of the people are talking about stuff you're not interested in.
I mean, like
Go to liturgy.
if it was the case that I was like, oh, the orthodoxy of this, I would have no problems.
Will you go to liturgy?
What is that?
Go to Divine Liturgy, please. Go to Eastern Orthodox Church. Experience.
Is that a website or when?
It's a church. Go to your nearest. I don't know where you are. I don't have to dox you. Go to your nearest Eastern Orthodox church. Rokar. It could be Greek Orthodox. Go experience a Divine Liturgy. Right from your point of inquiry, you're moving away from atheism, and you have every reason to do that. It's the hardest form
moving
of
away from atheism.
What's that?
I didn't say I was moving away from atheism.
Well, no, you said moving away from atheism. You said moving away from hard atheism is rational. I'm just asking you to keep going.
I mean, again, fair, but it's just a matter of this. You're the million and first person to say, oh, well, you just got to do this, and
not just no. It's not going to be easy, dude. That's the other part.
I think okay. I know. I understand that. I think men. If you can give me the grace of understanding the gravity of what you just told me.
Yes, okay.
I understand. You are the million. It
is not a fix. No, I promise you, it is not a fix. In fact, your life will get harder. But I hold the view that the thing that's so deteriorating the society that we're in, and maybe you can try to be charitable in my assessment of this. I think the missing element and the reason people are moving, especially men, toward traditionalism, isn't just because aesthetics or something that like is unmoved for thousands of years. Of course, that plays in. But what I'm pointing to is that men like you and me, we haven't been drawn into sacrifice and participation. We're not challenged. We're sitting pretty. And so we're all done with it. We're done with sitting pretty. And so we're doing all this philosophy and we're on panels. What I'm saying is the reason I'm pointing you in the direction of orthodoxy isn't just because I think it's true. I certainly don't believe it's going to be an easy fix, dude. It's not easy. It's not easy. I'm not going to ask just anybody at any point in time just to do it.
I get that. What I am trying to say.
Actually, a compliment to invite you, actually, because it's I
appreciate that.
There are weak people who aren't actually trying to figure out the clusterfuck that is our reality right now, and you seem to be trying to do it. And so I'm going, absolutely. Cool. He's trying at least. He's not just going like, fuck, nihilism for the win. Like we need people with your mindset to keep pursuing, dude.
Yes, exactly. So, so then I am. If I were to do this in the best possible faith with all of everything that anyone could ask, and then I was still in the same position, how would that be irrational to say that I don't believe? Because again, a lot of people told me, the Catholic Church, this church, you go to that church, you read this, and so on and so on, and they all said, if you do this,
it would all depend on your reasoning. And I'm totally, whether it's on screen or off, you can hit me up. If you go to an Orthodox experience and go to a Divine Liturgy and you go, you know what, there's something there, I just don't know what it is. Like, I'd be happy with that. I wouldn't even lay anything else on you. I'd just say, yeah, dude, just keep going. I would ask you, when you hit a bump, I would take you as a case by case. I would say, what's the bump, bro? Like, it wouldn't even be a debate forum. It would be DMs or a phone call. I'd be like, what's the bump?
It would be the basic truth claims, the basic truth claims. I think the ethics, all that stuff. But when it comes to things like the resurrection, things like the existence of a temporal God, all that kind of stuff, I can't buy into that. Which is why I have such a great respect for Christian ethics, but not specifically the truth claims.
Let's go there. Let's see if that's rational. So I'm going to ask you, what's the standard, the criterion you're using to determine that, let's say, for instance, if God existed, he not only wouldn't or couldn't condescend as human, but couldn't resurrect. Is you just holding to a naturalism position? Is that okay? And so naturalism is your new standard for what is possible and not possible, right?
In this context, yeah.
Okay. And would you say what you're determining is possible and not possible, being strictly naturalistic, you're relying on induction, right?
Sure. And again, just to be clear, I'm not saying that that I don't that I couldn't believe in these things. I'm just saying that currently I don't accept them.
Okay, they would be constituted as miracles, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And so you're saying I don't believe in miracles because my go-to standard for what's true and false is naturalism, right?
More or less.
Okay. Would you say that a miracle under that view would be defined as something that the regular laws of logic, like anything that exists or occurs, that the regular laws of physics, not logic.
Yeah.
Anything that occurs in the world that the regular laws of physics can't explain, would you say that's miraculous?
It would depend. I would say the only reason I'm hesitating is because we don't have a full understanding.
I understand. You don't have all variables, right?
So, I mean, yeah, maybe I would use the word miraculous, but the first step when we see something that seems to break the laws of physics wouldn't be like, oh, wow, that's a miracle.
Yeah, but
the assumption would be, oh, there's a different law that applies.
I understand. That's fair. But what I'm asking you is a different question. If something definitionally, it actually couldn't be explained by the regularity of physics.
How would we determine that?
Well, hold on a second. Just stick with granting that there could be something that just couldn't be explained by the regularity of physics and nature.
Okay.
I can help you determine one thing that by your own view would be miraculous. So if we agree, I'm not saying something we don't understand yet. I'm saying that if there was something that existed that actually definitionally, logically couldn't be explained by the laws of physics and the regularity of nature, you would say that's a miracle, right?
So you're saying if it existed a possibility that we could know that something could happen, or rather that something
couldn't be explained,
happen,
we know it couldn't be explained. Yeah,
I guess, but you would need, in that hypothetical, you would need to be able to have a standard as to why it couldn't. Well,
yeah, no, we could. We could reject rejecting an entailment would be a standard. Do you agree that we could come to truth not just by empirical analysis, but by negation or the impossibility of the contrary?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you one thing that exists, a phenomenon that exists in nature, because just keep in mind, what you determine is possible and isn't possible is given by the regularity of nature, that's unfolding in a regular way. And when something violates that, we go, there's got to be something fishy going on here, another law, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I'm saying is that the regularity itself, the way nature behaves, is something that can't be explained by that regularity. Do you agree? The regularity, like the way reality works, laws of physics, thermodynamics, gaseous law, and the rest, right? There's a way in which the world operates, the universe operates.
What is it that you're saying can't be explained?
What I'm saying is that regularity can't be explained by the regularity.
Yeah, okay.
So now we have one thing that you could observe in reality that actually goes outside of the bounds of naturalistic explanations, because naturalistic explanations, you have to grant yourself regularity first. Then we can do also, I don't even deny naturalistic explanations, right? Very useful. But you can't do naturalistic explanations unless you grant yourself that the world is regular in a certain way.
Sure. Can I? I mean, we're running a little low on time. If I can ask you slightly, kind of pivot a little bit. I think the atheism thing here. As you brought up rights before, I think love is another instance where I would prefer. So if you've never been in love, then why would it be irrational for somebody to think that love doesn't exist?
Well, that's a good question. I think if you don't have a referent for what love is, you need to be taught love, right? So, I mean, a Christian paradigm has an account for teaching love, but I think the atheist is in a worse position because a lot of times they're not like you. They're holding to a materialistic. They'd actually say, and you probably met them.
No, but they probably say the irrationality.
Well, no, they would say that love is a chemical reaction. You've heard this before, right?
Yep.
You don't believe that, right?
I mean, it's not a chemical reaction. I think there's more to it, but oxytocin and such are real.
Right. But let's say it was, though. Let's just try to get into the purely naturalistic view. Because keep in mind, you're rejecting supernatural claims on the basis of naturalism, but you accept things like love. So it's interesting that you, and I'm glad you do, accept things like love can't be reduced to materialism, but you also negate that someone could resurrect. But the thing is, you accept that love I would say from a purely atheistic view, love itself would transcend nature. It couldn't be identical to items in the world. Couldn't be identical to matter itself. Like you just said, there might be a chemical aspect to it, but the thing
So
we're
why is that
actually
different than God then?
well, because I'm saying that what you're now assuming, which I am glad you assume, because I think it's irrational to try to refute it, is that reality itself for you and I and everyone else is composed of material, and there's an immaterial reality to our existence.
Okay.
Do you agree?
Yeah.
Okay. So if there's an immaterial reality to our existence that's not identical to matter, according to a strict naturalist, at least, this is already above nature. This is not found in nature. Love, even information, something they could actually grasp, information, that, according to that paradigm, is actually supernatural. It doesn't exist in nature. It doesn't exist in any Cartesian location, information. So that's why I ask people like yourself who are on the fence, if you agree information exists and minds exist and concepts exist, but they don't exist like trees or apples or these things, I always ask the person in your position, in what way do they exist? Like, what's the way? Because an apple exists material. We can hold an apple, bite an apple, right?
So even if we're going to say like tangentially it exists in this whatever, I'm still not seeing how that answer is irrational. Because again, irrational. It's not about is it wrong. It's about is it rational.
Here's why it's irrational. It's irrational for an atheistic view because the thing you're pointing to, concepts, laws of logic, universals, particulars, words, meaning, math, minds, love, to their view, right? They assume these things exist, but they don't exist materially.
Wait,
I'm saying, just an atheistic view who denies God. If you
take some atheists sometimes somewhere, so it's not an entailment of atheism. It's not an entailment of atheism.
No, it is because the denial of God. This is where it gets disjunctive, which is there's an either or. If you deny God, are we going back to
your safe corner where we're only talking about strong atheism?
Listen, dude.
I'm just asking. I'm just asking.
I'm trying to explain it. Any soft atheism, any view that denies or is not convinced by a God existing, I'm saying the things you're appealing to are not found in nature, and in their nature itself would be conceptual. So what I'm saying is it's irrational to be an atheist on any scale of the spectrum, because to be an atheist, you're still appealing to information, meaning, language, math, laws of logic, knowledge, information, minds. What I'm saying is to hold a non-God view is to hold a view that you just grant yourself what we call the transcendental category. And I'm saying it's not rational to ad hoc grant yourself a whole category that's not found in nature. It's not rational. You're just granting yourself that I'm saying it's ad hoc. Ad hoc is an actual fallacy. If we agree fallacies are not rational, ad hoc granting yourself axioms or these sort of a priori things without any justification, I'm saying that's irrational.
And I mean, like, fair. I think that when you talk about this specific definite, I don't know, is ontological the right word? I don't fucking know. But you get into at that level, then there's definitely ways to define things in a certain way. So this means that, and that means that, and that means that. And I'm doing my best to follow what you're saying. But this obviously isn't a layman discussion. And so I'm what I'm arguing is that it's not crazy or insane for someone to be unconvinced of the claim.
Well, I'm saying it
is,
and here's why. Do you agree being unconvinced of a claim would assume some sort of epistemic system to come to the position of unconvinced?
Yes. Do you agree do you believe that? Do you agree that being atheist doesn't mean that you don't have that?
No, I'm saying you use it. The difference between using logic, I'm saying the real question is, can you justify the tool you're using? Because that's where it would be irrational. Because if an atheist came to a naturalistic claim or an empirical position that said God doesn't exist because I don't see evidence, or I don't think he would do these things, whatever the argument is, whatever their position they're going to come to is going to be downstream from a bunch of assumptions. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay. What I'm saying is the assumptions, once we check the assumptions, they don't have the same reason they're denying God's existence. They should deny all of the assumptions before them. Does that make sense?
Again, yes, that makes sense. But I think and maybe I'm splitting hairs, but
Okay.
I do think that you are still falling into incorrect and not illogical or irrational.
I would put them to, you have to say if something's correct, it would be logical, right?
Yes.
Okay. So if it's incorrect, we could say it's illogical because that's what we dictate as incorrect. What I'm saying is that the same.
So
listen,
wait.
Listen,
Okay.
hold
So,
on. Let me see.
well,
if you can
wait.
steel
That's a
man
good
me.
point there. That's a good point there. So would you say that anyone who believes something that is not true is has an irrational belief?
Well, that's the thing in question. Not true assumes objective truth exists. That's what I'm calling it.
Okay, so let's assume that objective truth exists. Is someone who believes or doesn't believe something that is true, or they're irrational because they're wrong? So the only people who are rational agents are the people who have all the right answers all the time.
No, not like that. Let's look at the truth itself existing. If I asked an atheist, does truth exist? If they say yes, I'm telling you that by their own criterion, they're actually being irrational to say that truth exists. Why? I'll tell you why. Because if I ask an atheist, even yourself, does truth exist? And you say yes, I'm going to ask you, how does it exist? In what way does it exist? Because saying existence is an ontological statement and a metaphysical statement. So I'm going to question the atheist metaphysics and ontology and go, interesting. I also agree truth exists, but from your view, I'm having a hard time when you say truth exists. What's the way in which it exists? You have a guitar in the back, you have a couch that exists in a particular way. You and I, as material beings, at least our bodies exist in a certain way. It's totally fair for me to ask the atheist if they believe truth exists. I'm going to ask them, cool. Now you're determining what's reasonable to believe in for its existence and what's unreasonable. I'm saying to deny God based on the empirical standard, I don't see evidence. I'm saying that's irrational from the atheist position because truth itself is immaterial and there's no evidence. You don't have physical evidence of truth. So they're assuming things they should deny. They should deny truth. When they do deny truth. They think they could breastfeed as a man. They think they could breastfeed.
Leftism. That's not atheism.
It's an entailment, bro.
We agree on that part. We hate the birthing people.
You're being reasonable because you're moving away from atheism. That's why you're being reasonable.
I'm not moving away from atheism.
Yeah, you are.
I'm moving away from an affirmative belief that God doesn't exist.
Good. That's away from atheism.
And maybe you're right. God. But either way, I still don't see how anything that you said comes down to being wrong versus being irrational. I think you kept conflating the two.
Because the atheist,
only the strong atheist. I agree with you. The strong atheist. I agree with you that the strong atheist.
All right, we're gonna wrap up the open portion there. Thank you to both of you, killing it tonight. All right, we're gonna get into the 5-minute closing statement. TheIndianJesus, whenever you're ready, I will start up the timer with your voice.
Yeah, so most of this time I was being charitable because JimBob wouldn't stick on the spectrum of atheism that the word actually means, and whenever we came to a point of rationality, then he jumped back to the strong atheist is, well, that's all of them. It wasn't until the last 10 minutes or so where we actually got into discussions of other types of atheism and where that rationality is. And, he said a lot of stuff, and I'm sure a lot of it is correct, but I don't think that at the end of the day, when we are discussing these things, there is a strong difference in that which is illogical and that which is incorrect. And I think he is conflating the two, hopefully not on purpose, but you never know. You never know. Again, I was here to defend the notion that I don't know, but I am unconvinced is a rational position. And I didn't really hear very many arguments, again, outside of the strong atheist. Again, a lot of that stuff with the atheist perspective and all that stuff, unless you're specifically talking about the strong atheist on the topic of God, there is no such thing as the atheist perspective, and so that's just another way to smuggle in other things. Yeah, irrational is not or incorrect does not mean irrational. Atheist, well, we got past that. Yeah, and I think with anytime you hear somebody say the atheist perspective on something that isn't a theistic God, just switch that with the dog owner's perspective on and see if it makes sense. And if it doesn't make sense, then it's the same thing for atheism. Atheism is a position. It answers one question. Do you believe in God? Nothing else. It is not a worldview. It is not an ideology. All these other things come from other places. So it's not that if you are an atheist, you don't have a worldview. It is that your worldview comes from somewhere other than the claim of atheism. Thank you both, and I'll consume my time.
All right. Thank you for that closing statement. And with that, we're going to hand the mic over to JimBob. And JimBob, whenever you're ready, I'll start the timer up with your voice.
All right. No, thank you so much. It was a fun conversation and debate. Yeah, the question of whether atheism is rational, it doesn't matter if you're the hardline 10 out of 10 atheism or even the close to theism or Christianity too. The problem is an atheist, like my opponent, thinks that their belief or disbelief in God is somehow neutral. It's not, because you're assuming a bunch of things already to come to that conclusion. You have an epistemic system. You believe that you're that you're a thinker, that you have a mind, that reason exists, that logic exists, that the world operates a certain way. You believe in information and meaning and mathematics, and you think about all of these things. You think you're an agent in the world and there's an external world. These are all metaphysical claims. So when an atheist says, look, atheism is totally rational. It's just an isolated position on an isolating topic. It's not. I demonstrated tonight, you can't come to a position on atheism, soft or hard, without assuming a bunch of things beforehand. And so what I demonstrated, and this is always the case, the reasons people deny God, evidentialism, God shouldn't do these things, these are not rational positions. If you hold the position that God doesn't exist, or you don't have a belief in God exists, whether it's hard or soft of a claim, you're actually using most of the time an evidential position, which is to say, well, there's no evidence for it. This is the Matt Dillahunty approach, right? The problem is there's no evidence physically of truth. There's no evidence physically of the laws of logic. There's no evidence of knowledge. There's no evidence of information. There's no evidence physically of universals. There's no evidence of meaning and mathematics. There's a whole category of things there's no evidence for, and the atheist can't come to the position to deny God without assuming a bunch of things they should also deny. I demonstrated that that's an irrational position. You're denying this thing, and you're accepting this whole slew of other things, but by the same standard, you should deny them because there's no evidence for those things. Rights was just a good example. He pointed to there's good evidence for rights because people use force. People use force in places that they don't care about rights, right? That would mean that there's evidence of God because I did something using force, right? That would follow. That's actually not rational either. What is rational is to go off of your experience, go off of what's in accordance with reason and logic, and going off of what's in accordance with reason and logic, it's included to ask a question. What justifies reason and logic? That's a fair question. My opponent, glory to God, admitted that's a fair question. So the atheist doesn't get away with getting to their conclusion without accounting for how they got there. That's what's in question. That's actually how we determine something's irrational. I showed tonight that you cannot hold an atheist position and come to conclusions without assuming beliefs exist. Is there any evidence for beliefs, right? If some atheist says, oh, no, I have a set of beliefs, I just don't have a belief in God. Well, you have a belief that beliefs exist, don't you? No, we can go super meta. My opponent, does he believe that beliefs exist? Well, I'm sorry, that's another conceptual category that's not found in nature. You can't find a belief. In fact, he should deny, an atheist who says, I don't have any evidence for God, therefore I don't believe in God, should deny beliefs. They don't exist in nature. You cannot hold them. You can't put them in a petri dish. These are universal, conceptual, not found in nature. And the argument, even the movement toward a God, even if it's a nebulous God, even if it's just a divine conceptual God, that's more reasonable than the denial of God or even a soft denial of God. So I don't care if you're on the spectrum. honestly, this whole spectrum shit has really got out of hand. Every time someone doesn't want a strong position, they have no convictions, they develop a spectrum and they say, well, it's blurry. I don't have a position. There's a 10 out of 10 autism, and there's a 3 out of 10. There's a 10 out of 10 I'm a man, and there's a 3 out of 10 I'm a man. Everything gets relative, right? And I didn't even push on relativism. All atheism reduces to relativism. Here's why. I don't care if you're soft atheism like he is, or a hard atheism. The reason it reduces to relativism is because atheism, whether you're a 10 out of 10 Dillahunty, or a 5, glory to God, maybe a 2 out of 10, the Indian Jesus will come around and find orthodoxy. The reason it leads to relativism is because they don't have an absolute standard for truth, which makes arguing for God's existence irrelevant because they don't have an absolute standard for truth. And yet here they are affirming that truth exists. And I go, where? Nowhere.
All right. Thank you for that closing statement. Thank you all for watching the Swords of Reason. If you've liked what you've seen, make sure you sub up, hit the like, so that, again, I can continue bringing you guys these kick-ass debates.